I'm James.
Hi, Melissa.
And we are joined by Lindsay.
Hey, how's it
Hi.
going?
You have brought along well, we're not sure how we feel about this because there could be some emotions on display in the next 20 minutes. This is the Red Lantern.
Yeah.
And it's a game about sledding and dogs and a race.
Yep, so it is a game where you're going to go out and dog sled throughout Alaska and try to survive the wilderness. So you play as the musher. She has dreams of becoming, a dog sled racer, and she wasn't really happy with how her life was going. So she decides to hit the reset button. She hits it a little hard, and you're like, I'm going to go off grid and just live in the woods. Mm-hmm. She kind of goes that way in the most extreme of ways and ends up heading up to Alaska to start a new life. And so It takes place as you're going out to start this life and find your cabin. And you get a little lost along the way.
She could have just cut her own bangs, but she went full.
Yeah.
Oh.
Bangs are much, much safer, arguably.
Okay, well, we've got some footage that you've brought along to show everyone off, which we can see right now. There's a good boy straight away. That's great. The first trailer I think you had from this was last year.
Yeah.
Like, how was the reaction to that? How did you feel about putting this kind of game out there at that time?
We were anxious. No one had sort of done this kind of game. We knew we had a more hardcore trailer, I guess we can say in the end. But no one had done the dog sledding kind of thing. And so we were like, we don't know. It's a very existentialist game dealing with identity, and we're like, we'll see what happens. And then people were like, I didn't know this was the game I wanted, but I want it. And we were just like, okay, cool. Obviously, some people are worried about the puppers. We can talk more about the puppers.
Everyone is worried about the puppers because they're such good boys.
They are good boys. You actually bring your best buddy Chomper up with you from San Francisco. So, and along the way, I'll get to adopt 4 more dogs. We actually have 8 to choose from. Each with their own little quirks and storylines and little arcs, and you're helping them figure out who they are while they help you figure out who you are. Like Barkley, one of my favorites, he tends to bark or bite before he barks, and you have to help him sort of find his voice and go out and be like, no, talk it out. You can scare things off. You don't have to go in everything with your mouth. And so he goes, he puts himself in a little more danger than some of the other ones. So you got to keep a lookout for him.
Oh gosh, I'm so nervous.
Yeah, this is already.
You can protect them all. You can save all the pups.
That's what I need to.
Yeah,
know.
but you can is what you said. Not.
Yeah.
Not guaranteed.
Some of them.
Nothing is guaranteed in life.
That's very true. That's very true.
So the name of the game, the Red Lantern, is actually a reference to the actual race?
Yeah, it's a reference to sort of both the dog sledding world as well as it's sort of using the Tour de France. It has a historical component where there was a red lantern actually on the end of the caboose on a train to make sure the whole train was connected. And in dog sledding, it's given to the person that comes in last place. And the idea is that you're not really going at it for any kind of awards. You're there to persevere. It's a light that's going to help you find home. And you're pushing through because you want to make it to the end. And it's not about anything else, but proving to yourself what you're capable of doing. And so that's really what we're trying to get to for this story, is she's out there to figure out who she is and what this world's going to make her become.
So there's some downtime. You're not always sledding with the puppies. I see we're hanging out, building a fire. This goofy one.
The one with his mouth open?
I've got a favorite. Yeah, look.
You want that belly rubs, boy. That's actually Gail. She'll probably get some good belly rubs in a second. But yeah, when you actually have to camp and you're going to have that moment to basically be able to feed yourself and feed your dogs, cook up some meat, we wanted camp to be a really cozy space. So when you're at camp, time doesn't pass. You can just pet the dogs for, 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, and just hang out. Sit at the fire. Listen to the music that will normally play, and then you can just kind of chill and have that. Even though the game has some stressful moments, we wanted to have a component of a meditative state and just feel calm and isolated and small. We really wanted you to feel small in the world. That's Igloo. I love Igloo.
Are they all the same breed? They don't look all the same.
So they're different types of huskies. So the types of dogs we're using are theoretically based on the Malamute, the Siberian Husky, and then the Alaskan Husky. And the Alaskan Husky is very race-oriented. So they're sort of leaned out really fast, If you actually study them, they have like a lower butt, which makes them faster for how they can propel themselves. I've done a lot of reading.
A lot of dog
this.
research.
I love this.
And but the bigger dogs are there to protect you, right? Some want to protect the food, some want to protect you, some want to protect the team. There's some smart dogs that are better at using their nose or their eyes, and they'll help you get through. There's fast dogs that can get you in and out of different situations. Slayer, the all-black one, she's afraid of elk. And so you have to help her figure out how to deal with her elk fear along the way. Chomper, being a city dog, got some little scoots. He is obsessed with squirrels, as all city dogs are. They've got that wild in them, and they just won't leave them alone. And so you're going to help that little guy figure out like how to prioritize his life. But he's got a prey drive that is a little unexpected sometimes. It helps to stay alive, though.
What was the kind of idea behind making so much of this game around helping these animals and figuring out their needs and your needs? Like, it's a really interesting mechanic to have in a game.
Yeah, for me, I love this elk. I'm gonna pause and then I will answer that. This elk, you do have a chance to maybe pet it. We might be successful. Petting elk is a bad plan. Okay, he had a good fear from two.
I don't like you today.
I was just reading the options. That was all.
Pull-out rifle is one of the options. You can actually try to pet that elk. You can successfully pet the elk. We don't recommend it, much like the Wildlife Service wouldn't recommend petting an elk. It might gore you, but it is a thing that can happen. But the idea of taking the dog stories really came out of just iterating on the game. So we wanted to make sure we created a world where the player could have their own story on how they got to the end, right? Like, what did we go through to get there? And we realized that dogs, like, finding that relationship with them was the part that was going to have the most impact from that. And, like, as a writer, that was, for me, what was going to create the most kind of character relationship. She's by herself.
Yeah.
And she's kind of in her head. And as a dog owner, I spend a lot of time talking to my dogs. My dog knows a lot about my own existential problems. And just thinking about like how they could reflect back on that for you. I have a really stubborn dog that also has a bit of a prey drive. So she was definitely found on the streets. So she's food territorial and is like, I've got this. I can take care of myself. And I'm like, just chill.
I am giving you food.
Yeah, you're fed. Like picnics are a disaster. But it's been very fun. So we also have a full like day to night cycle.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Different events will come out. We should have a headlight pop on here in a second.
Skunk.
And so we have all sorts of wildlife. We only have a few pieces in this one right now. There's a skunk, elk, caribou, squirrel, and an owl that are in this current demo that we're showing off.
Okay, pups?
But there are things like ox and everything else. And in this game, you have to manage your dog's energy and your own, right? You can't just care about yourself. And so in that instance, the dogs ran out of energy. But what happened is she didn't actually die. She woke back up in her van after having adopted the dogs, and she's
So let's go.
and she's catastrophizing all these terrible things that could happen to her and the dogs. So none of these things ever happen.
Okay.
Yep, nothing ever happens. It's that idea when you're going to go into a big meeting or you're going on a trip and you just imagine like, what if this thing happens? What if this thing happens? What if that happens? And so you're using that as a moment to prepare yourself for what's out there. So you start to learn more about the environment. And you'll be able to obtain these different items, like an axe. And be like, oh, if you like basically fail having the axe, you'll wake back up in the van and be like, oh, I probably should have packed an axe. Those are really helpful for getting like firewood. So we use those to continue to make you more prepared. Every subsequent run gets easier as you get these items until ultimately you're fully prepared, or you know the Alaskan wilderness well enough and you can get there and you make it to your cabin with your whole team.
Oh, I love that mechanic that it's not
It's not death.
world-ending.
Yeah. No, it's just
starting
nightmares.
again.
We all have those nightmares.
Yeah.
Everyone's had that. Anything about a family member, a pet, themselves, like those are there and they help you. You know, those kind of nightmares help you prepare for the things that can happen.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that was a really important part to just kind of incorporate. When you're playing in a roguelike, I was like, it feels wrong to just reset in like a more gamey way, where I was like, I want her to have this like kind of emotional connection. She obviously doesn't know she's constantly having nightmares.
Yeah.
But that's like, that is a component that we really thought was important. And I think Ashley Birch, who's our star in this game, did like an incredible job of like nailing that
I
feel.
thought that was Ashley first.
Yeah, I was going to say, are we mentioning who it sounds like? But
Yeah.
we are, so that's good.
Yep. No,
What
that
a
is
great voice for that too.
Yeah, we were really lucky to get her. She learned about the project. We're working with Sarah El Malay from Gone Home, too. She's our VO director. And when she had reached out and we talked about it, she's like, we need to get Ashley. And I was like, if you can get Ashley, I'm in. Like, let's do it. And so it's been awesome. So all of us in the booth together, like, bringing this to life has been just, like, a trip. And we're really excited to share some of the rest of the performance and everything else.
That's so lovely. You got dogs, Ashley Birch. I mean, I'm here.
What? Yeah, I mean, it's making a dream. It's
Yeah,
great.
it really, an owl.
And an owl.
You can argue with it. And this
Oh
is
my goodness.
See, I didn't read out that second option then because I thought that you were going to turn around and
I
be
was
like,
going to yell at you
yeah,
for it because
I've learned on this second run, never read the harsh options.
don't read the harsh options.
No.
I'd like to live in a world where nothing bad happens.
Yeah, and I've got that now. That's fine. So we can see like the 3 symbols at the top
Up at the
of the
top.
screen there. Like
Yep.
what's that representing?
So the pause your dog's energy. So they get tired the more they run. So they're the ones who have to carry you home ultimately. So you're relying on them to get you through the wilderness. That goes down as distance is traveled. The second one's your fullness. So that goes down as you take action. So going out to go chase an owl or look in this owl pellet he so generously bequeathed upon you.
Oh, how nice.
Let's see what we got in there. So Al ate a bullet at some point.
That's a good thing.
Sometimes video games we have to give you some resources. somehow.
Yeah.
And you're able to like check those things and have that relationship from there. So the sled also shows all your resources. She goes ahead and puts her bullet into there. You can see she has raw meat, and the tent is on there too. So you can click on the tent from the sled. When you get wood, that'll go on there. Your different persistent items will also go onto your sled. But the fullness, as you go out, examine owl pellets, have to hunt for different food that will take out your fullness. So you have to feed yourself, and then there's health. You're in a world in which things can happen to you. We'll see what happens with the elk this round.
Oh, no.
If we shoot it or maybe
We're going to
we
hunt
try
it.
to
We're going to hunt
hunting
it. Or are we going to hunt
Oh
it?
gosh.
Oh no, that's
Oh.
no, not when it's
Oh.
Thank you for helping us.
Okay.
I mean,
But you kind of had to.
yeah, I was just going to say, new people got to live in the wilderness. That's why I live in the city.
Same. I like groceries.
Let's go shopping.
And you've got to feed the dogs, right? So you've
Yes.
got to give them some meat.
They love
It's nature. I get that. I
Just
choose
don't like it.
I choose to live in a concrete world.
Get that saran wrapped meat in there. That's what I want. I want to just know it's like this is meat. I mean, all of our meat looks like ham hocks.
I don't want to know how
Chicken,
it got here.
ham hock.
No. So there's no, it doesn't look like there's any type of like clear map. So is it obvious where you can and cannot go when you're sledding?
There will be like a node-based map.
Okay.
So that's not included in this demo right now, but it's more like, hey, do you want to head towards the forest? Do you want to head towards the river? Do you want to head towards the cliffs?
Okay.
And that changes a little bit of the distribution of the types of animals that you can find. As that all leads you towards the cabin. So there is a map that will be in this game. Right now, you're just kind of willfully kind of going through the snow and enjoying that from there. But there'll be a slight strategic component where you're choosing to go and heading towards different persistent items in the game.
There's some people in the chat saying it's reminding them of like Firewatch and the Long Dark.
Yeah.
Are those kind of things that you took inspiration from doing it?
A little bit. We love stylized art. My art team worked with me on the King's Quest episodic series, so we come from high art-driven story stuff. We really loved making sure we could stay in the sunrise sunset palette. I don't know if you guys have been to the north in the winter.
Nope.
But I spent when I was up in Iceland, it was just sunrise and sunset for most of the day, tiny bit of blue, and then clearly darkness for the rest. So we wanted to kind of exaggerate what those kind of palettes were, but hitting that stylized component for what the world could be lets us have a lot more narrative freedom, as well as animation freedom for a small team. Doing something in a hyper-realistic way is just too much work for us to be able to keep up with the guys that can do that really well.
Well, and also it'd be too much to have hyper-realistic
Yeah, I also
doggos
think that.
if things are going to happen to them.
I don't think I could ever
No one
shoot
wants
that
to see that.
hyper-realistic elk. I have a hard enough time shooting that elk anyway. Most of the time I don't. I've played through with our team, and I got to that, and that was the event I had to do. I had to kill it to win. And I was like, I don't want to, guys. And they're like, you have to finish the game. And I was like,
holding down the sled.
oh. And so ended up doing it. But it became part of my player story, right? I was I wanted to get through without having to do that, but the world sort of led me into that choice. And that's what I hope feels interesting to people, right? Where it's you're not making the choice
we can
strictly
make a
based on the
fire.
narrative. You're
It'll be nice
making
to
the
cook up
choice
some
based on what the
food
world's
and-
kind of making you make
Of
the choice
course,
on.
I can
Yeah,
check on all of
um,
you.
And so the dogs can also help feed themselves, as we've just saw. There's some ptarmigans, which are these little sort of wintry bird things up in Alaska, and you can let the dogs go out and try to catch some. And if they catch them, they fill up their own energy meter, and you don't have to use a bullet or anything like that. You know, they find their own inner wild a little bit.
I'm so New York. I thought that was a pigeon.
Yeah, I mean it's basically like
You
a
don't get
fluffy.
pigeons.
It's a
Beautiful
fluffier
pigeon.
pigeon, fluffy pigeon.
I don't think you get pigeons in the
Maybe time to get some rest.
wilderness
You'd
like
be
this.
My
surprised
stomach will be
pigeons.
grumbling by morning.
They're a hardy
Yeah.
bird. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You
Well,
can get through anything.
Everyone feeling better?
sure.
And this is a question I'm very curious about. Is the meat hung because of bears?
It is hung because of
Back on
bears.
the trail?
See?
See, you're not just a
I
city
could live
girl.
out- I could
you
live
know.
Yeah,
out.
you're ready. We've got some meat hung from on a string at our booth here too.
Do you
That's
really?
We bought like dog toy ham hocks
Should we
and we strung them with meat.
Oh, I love that.
And we were like, this will be fun. And you know, this is still in development, so
Maybe
you'll
time to
see a
get
lot
some
of
rest.
changes before we
I'm sure my
release later
stomach will
this
be
year.
grumbling.
So is that if you don't hang the meat
All
up,
right.
a
Everyone
bear
feeling better?
could arrive at your
Oh,
camp?
nice.
We force you to hang the meat up. We want to
Okay,
teach
good.
best practices here too.
Yeah, that's kind of
Oh,
like, you kind of
let's
got to do
something
that.
else.
Bears will sniff out that kind of stuff, and then they're
Back on the
really
trail?
smart about it, from what I
Let's go,
understand.
Chopper.
So they
Uh-huh.
could like break into things too. They're no joke, bears.
Yeah, we're out in California, so our campgrounds all have like bear boxes, and I went up to Alaska to do some research, and lots of bear boxes there. We had to have bear training at this one place about like, if a bear comes onto the coast near us, we all have to get together and act really big, and we might use the bear spray. And I was like sitting in our tent one night, and you hear this guy's like, "There's a bear!" And I was like, "Oh my god!" And I was just like staying. It was like a baby bear, it was far enough away, but I was like, "Well, this is a horrifying situation."
Wow.
Have you ever seen a bear?
No.
Me neither.
No, I haven't seen
I've seen
a
a
bear.
really big rat.
That's close.
And to think it just knows
got
how to
rabies.
do this.
Right?
Knows how to
And they don't
survive.
care if you go at them.
No.
They don't care at all.
Because we did see in the trailer,
Come back.
there is a bear in the trailer.
There is a bear.
And
in the trailer.
he is
Feel
not
like we're getting
nice to
close.
one of your dog friends.
He's not.
Let's go, Chopper.
So there's potential for you to lose some dogs along the way.
There's the potential for you to lose a dog along the way. There's one dog that can have a storyline that doesn't end well. You can very much prevent it. There are a couple of ways
Let's
to go
go.
about that, but there is a narrative arc where that can happen.
Is it clear how to avoid that?
Yes.
Yes,
At least I think so.
okay. Okay, good.
When everyone's like knocking down my door, I'll be like, I'm really sorry.
It wasn't
Chopper.
clear.
I should have tutorialized it more.
So when can we expect to see this
Yeah.
in our lives?
It'll be later this year, so we're not announcing our full date until we're a little closer. We want to make sure we're like secure and through, you know, all the bits and pieces. As we know, games are hard these days. But yeah, we'll be out
Wait,
later
is
this
that a
year. We'll
camera
do an announcement trailer closer to the release. We're going to be on Switch, Epic Game Store, and Xbox Game Pass. So
Cool.
it'll be a good time.
Yeah, that's a good time.
We'll all go out in Alaska together and see what happens.
That's probably the closest I will get to going to Alaska.
That's all that's fine for me.
It's pretty good up there, though.
I bet it's beautiful.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for bringing
Yeah,
it down.
thank
It
you
looks
guys.
amazing. I'm really
seriously.
excited to play it.
Really
when it
appreciate
comes
the
out.
time.
It was great. That was the Red Lantern. We'll be back in just a few minutes with some guys from Gearbox, and they're going to talk to us about Borderlands. So we'll see you then.